Everything inside me shattered the second I saw that screen. The calendar was open, glowing in the dim light of our living room. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, every single one of those nights had the same name written across them. Jeff, 8 p.m. And me. I was relegated to a tiny slot on Sunday afternoon, labeled Coffee with Caleb. Like I was some business appointment he had to squeeze in between actual priorities. My hand trembled as I set the phone back down on the table, trying to make it look exactly as I'd found it. Kendrick was still in the kitchen, humming some tune I used to find endearing, acting like everything was perfectly normal. But nothing was normal. Nothing had been normal, apparently, and I'd been too blind to see it. How could this be happening? We'd been together for 2 years, 2 full years of building a life, making plans, talking about the future. And now this? This secret schedule with someone whose name I'd never even heard. Caleb, want some tea? His voice drifted out from the kitchen, casual and warm, exactly the way it always sounded. I forced myself to smile, though my lips barely cooperated. No, I'm good, I managed to say, my voice coming out strangled and unnatural. I pushed myself up from where I'd been kneeling by the coffee table and settled onto the sofa, pretending to scroll through my own phone. But my mind wasn't processing anything on the screen. All I could think about was that name, Jeff. Who was he? What role did he play in Kendrick's life? And most importantly, why had Kendrick never mentioned him even once in all the time we'd been together, when we supposedly shared everything? He emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 mugs, steam rising from both, and sat down beside me on the sofa. I could feel his warmth, the familiar weight of him settling into the cushions, but somehow today even that felt different. Tainted. You okay? You look kind of off, he said, genuine concern coloring his voice as those green eyes studied my face. Off. That was one way to put it. I looked at him, really looked at him. He was perfect. Like always. That sharp jawline I'd traced with my fingers countless times. Those green eyes that used to make me feel like I was the only person in his world. That smile that convinced me I was his everything. But now, seeing him sitting there so casually, I couldn't help but wonder, how much of this was real? How much had always been an act? I'm fine, I lied, taking the mug from him even though I had no intention of drinking. I just needed something to do with my hands, something to keep them from shaking visibly. Kendrick reached out and touched my hand, his fingers warm and gentle like they'd always been. You sure? You seem different today. Something happened at work? I couldn't tell him. If I opened my mouth and let the truth spill out, everything would shatter. This relationship, this trust we'd supposedly built, these 2 years of my life I'd invested in us. So I chose silence instead, nodding slightly and sipping the tea I didn't want. But inside, everything was burning, slowly consuming me from the inside out. That night, after Kendrick had fallen asleep, I found myself staring at his phone again where it sat charging on the nightstand. It was locked, of course. I'd never asked for his password because I'd trusted him completely. Trust. What a joke that seemed now. I could feel that trust cracking, splintering into smaller and smaller pieces with each passing second. The next morning at the office, I couldn't focus on anything. Jeff, 8 p.m., repeated nights. The questions cycled through my mind on an endless loop. Was Kendrick cheating on me? Was this an affair? Or was there some innocent explanation? Maybe Jeff was a friend, or a colleague, or a client. But then why all the secrecy? Why had I never heard this name in 2 years of daily conversations, of sharing our lives? Caleb, I literally jumped in my chair. Nina, my coworker, was standing in front of my cubicle with a concerned expression. You've been staring at that blank screen for 10 minutes straight. Everything okay? Yeah, just tired, I said quickly, plastering on what I hoped was a convincing smile. She didn't look convinced, but she was kind enough not to push. She understood I wasn't in the mood to talk, and I silently appreciated her for that sensitivity. But I did want to talk, just not to Nina. I wanted to talk to Kendrick. I wanted to ask him directly, demand answers, make him explain what was happening. But I was terrified. Terrified that once I asked the question, once I heard his answer, everything would be irreversibly over. So I made a decision. I'd wait a little longer. I'd give myself time to think, to prepare. But alongside that decision came another one. darker and more determined. I would find out the truth myself, no matter what it took. The rest of that day crawled by in agonizing slow motion. Every hour felt like 3. I watched the clock, imagining what Kendrick might be doing, wondering if he was texting Jeff, planning their next meeting. When I finally got home that evening, Kendrick was already there, chopping vegetables for dinner with that easy smile on his face. "Hey babe, how was your day?" he asked, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "Fine," I said automatically, setting my bag down by the door. We went through our usual evening routine, cooking together, eating dinner, watching something mindless on television. But I wasn't really there. I was studying him, searching for signs of guilt, for cracks in his performance. Was he really this good at lying? Or was I losing my mind over nothing? Later, as we got ready for bed, I watched him brush his teeth through the bathroom mirror. He caught my eye and smiled, toothpaste foam at the corners of his mouth. And for a moment he looked so young and innocent that I almost convinced myself I was overreacting. "Almost. Love you," he said as he climbed into bed beside me. "Love you too," I whispered back. And I meant it. That was the worst part. I still loved him desperately, even as suspicion was eating me alive. I lay awake long after his breathing had evened out into sleep, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. Tomorrow was Tuesday. According to that calendar, tomorrow night at 8 p.m., Kendrick had plans with Jeff, and suddenly I knew exactly what I needed to do. I would follow him. I would see for myself who Jeff was and what they were doing together. Maybe I'd discover this was all innocent, just a friendship I hadn't known about. Maybe I'd find proof of mom worse. Either way, I couldn't live in this uncertainty anymore. I needed to know the truth, even if that truth destroyed everything I thought I had. Tuesday night, I sat alone in our apartment, watching the clock like it was my enemy. 7:58 p.m. That morning Kendrick had mentioned casually over coffee that he'd be home late. "Important client meeting," he'd said, not even looking up from his phone as he'd sipped his espresso. The lie had rolled off his tongue so smoothly, so effortlessly, but I'd seen that calendar. Tuesday. Jeff. 8 p.m. This wasn't coincidence. I grabbed my jacket and keys, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My plan was simple. Just watch. Just confirm I wasn't going insane. Maybe there really was a client meeting. Maybe Jeff was his boss, or an important business contact, and I was spiraling over nothing like Nina always warned me about. But my gut told me differently. My gut was screaming that everything was a lie. I drove to his office building, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The parking lot was nearly empty at this hour, except for a few scattered cars, including Kendrick's black sedan, unmistakable and exactly where I'd expected to find it. I parked far enough away to stay hidden in the shadows, then waited, feeling like some pathetic detective in a bad movie. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Just when I was starting to think maybe I'd gotten the location wrong, the building's front doors opened, and my breath caught in my throat. Kendrick walked out, but he wasn't alone. Another man was with him. Tall, easily 6 feet, blonde hair that caught the parking lot lights, athletic build visible even through his jacket, and the way he was laughing at something Kendrick had said, the way their bodies angled toward each other. This wasn't a boss. This wasn't a client. This was something else entirely, something much more personal. My hands clenched into fists. I watched, frozen, as they walked to Kendrick's car together, still talking, still laughing like they didn't have a care in the world, like I didn't exist. They got into the car and Kendrick drove away, leaving me sitting there in the cold darkness completely numb. I don't remember driving home. One minute I was in that parking lot, the next I was collapsed on our sofa struggling to breathe. My chest felt compressed, like someone had wrapped it in steel bands and was slowly tightening them. One question kept repeating in my mind: who the hell is Jeff? And why does Kendrick look so happy with him? When Kendrick came home around 10, he was completely normal, smiling. He kissed my forehead like he always did. "How was your day, babe?" "Fine," I said, and my voice sounded robotic even to my own ears. He didn't seem to notice anything wrong. Or maybe he was just pretending not to. We sat down to a late dinner. Leftover pasta he reheated while telling me about his day. Clients, meetings, traffic complaints. Every word felt like a knife. How could he lie so convincingly? How could he sit there eating and smiling when he'd just spent the evening with someone else? Kendrick, I said suddenly, interrupting his story about some difficult client. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. Yeah? Do you have a friend named Jeff? The fork stopped moving, just for a second, barely noticeable, but I saw it. I saw the tiny flicker of surprise in his eyes before he controlled his expression. Jeff? Yeah. Why do you ask? His tone was carefully casual, but I could detect the slight tension underneath. Just wondering. You've never mentioned him before. Thought maybe I should know about your friends. He shrugged, twirling pasta around his fork. Oh, he's just someone I train with at the gym sometimes. We grab drinks after workouts, occasionally. Nothing major. Gym buddy, training partner, drinks after workouts. Such simple, innocent explanations. But they didn't explain the calendar appointments. They didn't explain why this gym buddy warranted 3 scheduled meetings every week at specific times. They didn't explain why. In 2 years together, I'd never heard his name. That's cool, I said, forcing a smile. Maybe I could meet him sometime. Sure, yeah, maybe, Kendrick said vaguely, already moving on to another topic. But I wasn't moving on. I was stuck on that lie, turning it over and over in my mind, examining it from every angle. Because it was a lie, we both knew it. The only question now was what I was going to do about it. That night, I lay in bed next to Kendrick, listening to him sleep, and made my next decision. If he wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. I'd learn everything about Jeff Morrison, because that had to be his last name. The one I'd glimpsed on Kendrick's phone screen. I'd figure out what they meant to each other, what they were doing together, and then I'd decide whether this relationship was worth saving or if I needed to walk away before I got hurt any worse. The next morning, I called in sick to work. As soon as Kendrick left for the office, I opened my laptop and started searching. Social media was a beautiful and terrible thing. It made finding people incredibly easy, especially when they were careless about their privacy settings. Jeff Morrison, 29 years old, personal trainer, lives downtown, and his Instagram was public. I scrolled through his feed with shaking hands, and every photo felt like another punch to the gut. There were gym selfies showing off his admittedly impressive physique, travel photos from exotic beaches and mountain hikes, food pictures from expensive restaurants, and scattered throughout, like landmines waiting to explode, were photos of him with Kendrick. The first one I found was from 3 months ago, both of them shirtless on a beach, sunset painting the sky behind them orange and pink. They looked happy, relaxed. The caption read, "Best summers with the best company." 3 months ago, when I'd thought Kendrick was on a work trip to a conference, he'd sent me pictures from hotel rooms and convention centers, complained about boring presentations and bad conference food. All lies. I kept scrolling, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. More pictures emerged, fancy dinners I'd never known about, hiking trails they'd conquered together, weekend getaways I'd been told were work obligations. In one photo, Kendrick was holding Jeff's hand, helping him climb over some rocks, both their faces showing pure, genuine joy. That joy should have been mine. Those moments should have been ours. We were supposed to be a couple, a committed, faithful couple. So why was Kendrick living this entire separate life with someone else? I slammed the laptop shut before I threw it across the room. My hands were shaking violently now, and I could feel myself starting to break down. Part of me wanted to scream, to cry, to call Kendrick immediately and demand explanations. But another part, the part that was still thinking clearly, knew I needed more information first. I needed to meet Jeff Morrison face to face. Friday afternoon, I stood outside CrossFit Apex, gathering courage I didn't really have. I'd spent the last 2 days meticulously planning this confrontation while maintaining a perfect facade of normalcy around Kendrick. Smiling at breakfast, texting him during the day, cuddling on the sofa at night, all while my insides were screaming. Jeff's Instagram stories had made finding him easy. He'd tagged this gym in his workout posts, complete with his typical training times. Saturday mornings, apparently, were his heavy lifting days. So here I was, about to walk into a gym and confront a stranger about his relationship with my boyfriend. If anyone had told me a week ago I'd be doing this, I would have laughed. Now, nothing seemed funny anymore. The gym was busy when I entered, filled with the sounds of clanging weights and grunting athletes. I spotted Jeff immediately. Kind of hard to miss someone that tall and blonde. He was at the bench press, headphones in, completely absorbed in his workout. For a moment I just watched him, trying to reconcile this real person with the figure who'd been haunting my thoughts. Taking a deep breath, I walked over. Jeff? He pulled out one earbud, looking at me with polite confusion. Yeah? Can I help you with something? I'm Caleb, Kendrick's boyfriend. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. His entire demeanor changed instantly. The confusion morphed into shock, then recognition, then something that looked uncomfortably like guilt. Oh, hi there. We need to talk. Now. My voice came out harder than I'd intended, but I was beyond caring about pleasantries. He glanced around the busy gym, then nodded. Okay, let's go outside. We walked to the parking lot in silence. The tension between us thick enough to cut. Once we were away from potential eavesdroppers, we stood facing each other like opponents sizing each other up before a fight. Look, Jeff started, his tone defensive. I don't know what you think is happening. I don't think anything. I interrupted sharply. I want facts. You and Kendrick. What exactly is going on between you two? He ran a hand through his blonde hair, a nervous gesture that told me more than words could. We're friends. That's all. I swear. Friends who meet every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night at 8 p.m.? Friends who go on beach vacations together while I'm told it's a work conference. Friends who have dinner dates at expensive restaurants and hike mountain trails. My voice was rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. Try again. Jeff's eyes widened. He told you about our schedule? No. I found it myself. On his calendar, along with a lot of other things he's been hiding from me. He looked down at his shoes and I could see him struggling with what to say. Listen, man. It's really not what you're imagining. We just hang out, work out together, talk about stuff. That's it. Then why the secrecy? I pressed, taking a step closer. Why have I never heard your name in 2 years of being with him? Why is any of this hidden from me if it's so innocent? Jeff's silence was answer enough. He couldn't meet my eyes, couldn't come up with a reasonable explanation, because there wasn't one. Whatever was happening between him and Kendrick, it had crossed lines that simple friendship didn't cross. Does he talk about me? I asked quietly, a different kind of pain creeping into my voice. When you're together, does he mention me at all? Jeff finally looked up and I saw genuine discomfort on his face. Yeah, he does. He talks about you a lot, actually. What does he say? That you're important to him, that he loves you, that you've built a good life together. Jeff hesitated, then added, but also that sometimes he feels like he can't breathe, like there's too much pressure to be perfect all the time. Those words hit me like a physical blow. Pressure from me? I think from the relationship in general, from expectations, from, I don't know, man. I'm not a therapist. I just listen when he needs to talk. And the beach trip? The dinners? The hikes? I demanded. Where do those fit into your listening sessions? Jeff shifted uncomfortably. We're friends. Friends do things together. You didn't think, I repeated bitterly. Neither did he, apparently. Neither of you thought about me sitting at home trusting him completely while he was out living this whole separate life with you. I'm sorry, Jeff said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. I genuinely am. If I'd known it would cause problems. You did know. That's why it was all secret. That's why he never mentioned you to me. Why you're not in any of his stories or posts that I might see. You both knew exactly what we were doing. Jeff didn't argue because he couldn't. We stood there in the parking lot, two people connected by one man who'd somehow failed both of us in different ways. Do you have feelings for him? I asked bluntly. Romantic feelings? Jeff was quiet for a long moment, and that silence told me everything I needed to know even before he spoke. Yeah, he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I do, but I've never acted on it. He's with you, and I've respected that boundary. Have you? I challenged. Because from where I'm standing, those beach photos and dinner dates look a lot like crossing boundaries. We've never, Jeff started, then stopped. It's never been physical. I swear to you nothing physical has happened between us. Emotional affairs are still affairs, I said quietly, feeling exhausted suddenly. All the anger was draining out of me, leaving just hollow sadness. Maybe worse in some ways. Jeff didn't respond to that. What could he say? Does he have feelings for you? I asked. needing to know even though the answer would destroy me. You'd have to ask him that, Jeff said carefully. I can't speak for what he feels, but his evasion was answer enough. If Kendrick felt nothing, Jeff would have said so immediately. The fact that he was hedging meant there was something there, something real enough that he couldn't dismiss it with easy reassurance. I turned to leave, my heart feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Stay away from him, I said over my shoulder. Whatever this is, it's done. You've caused enough damage. Caleb, wait. But I didn't wait. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away, leaving Jeff standing alone in that parking lot. I had all the information I needed now. The question was what I was going to do with it. By the time I got home, I'd made my decision. Tonight, when Kendrick came home, we were going to have the conversation I'd been avoiding. No more pretending. No more fake smiles over dinner. It was time for the truth, whatever that truth might cost us. I walked into our apartment to find Kendrick already home, standing in the kitchen preparing dinner, humming some melody I used to find comforting. Not anymore. Not after everything I'd learned. I dropped my bag by the door with more force than necessary, the thud making him look up. No more waiting. No more pretending everything was fine. We were having this conversation right now, whether either of us was ready or not. Who is Jeff to you? I asked directly, my voice cutting through the domestic scene like a blade. Kendrick froze completely. The knife in his hand stopped mid-chop through a carrot suspended in the air. His eyes went wide as they met mine, and I watched the color drain from his face. Caleb, tell me the truth. Right now. I stepped closer, my hands clenched at my sides to keep them from shaking. He set the knife down carefully on the cutting board, visibly trying to collect himself. He's a friend. I already told you that when you asked before. Don't you dare lie to me. My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay strong, the hurt bleeding through my anger. I saw you with him, Kendrick. I went to your office. I saw you leave together. I found his social media. You've been spending time with him for 3 months. And I knew nothing about it. The silence that followed was deafening. Guilt painted itself across his features, so clearly he might as well have been holding a sign. He couldn't even look me in the eye anymore. I'm not cheating on you, Caleb, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Then what is this? I demanded, my words tumbling out faster now, propelled by weeks of bottled-up hurt. What's with all the secrecy? Why do you have him scheduled 3 times a week on your calendar while I get squeezed into Sunday afternoons like an afterthought? I needed some space, he said quietly, still not meeting my gaze. Space. That single word pierced through me like a physical wound. Space? From me? My voice had dropped to almost nothing now, the fight draining out of me. No, not like that, please just listen. He reached toward my shoulder but I stepped backward, putting distance between us. Then like what? Explain it to me, Kendrick. Because right now I'm desperately trying to understand what I did wrong that made you need to go behind my back to someone else. He hesitated, struggling visibly with his words. When he finally spoke, each sentence felt like another cut. Being with you, everything has to be perfect. Caleb, you want the perfect relationship, perfect dates, perfect plans, perfect communication. Everything scheduled, everything planned out, and sometimes I need to breathe. I need spontaneity. So you went to him instead of talking to me about it. I interrupted, disbelief flooding through me. It's not like that. Jeff he understands. He doesn't expect anything from me. We just hang out. No pressure. No expectations. With you I feel like I'm constantly performing. Constantly trying to be good enough because that's what you need from me. That's what I need? I repeated, the words tasting bitter. Kendrick, I never asked you to be perfect. I asked for communication. I asked for honesty. How is that the same thing? But you do expect it, Caleb. His voice rose now, defensive and raw. Every time I'm running late, my phone lights up with your texts. Every time I change our plans, you get upset. I feel like I'm suffocating. He'd actually used that word. About me. About our relationship. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, threatening to fall. So you think I'm suffocating you? I repeated, letting him hear his own accusation reflected back. Kendrick's expression softened when he saw the tears I was trying so hard to hold back. Caleb, I didn't mean it like, yes, you did. You meant exactly that. I said, my voice breaking completely now. I grabbed my bag from where I'd dropped it, needing to leave before I completely fell apart in front of him. Caleb. Wait, please don't go. He tried to grab my arm, but I pulled away from his touch. I can't hear any more of this right now, I said quietly, backing toward the door. Ironically, I need space too. I left our apartment, the place where we'd built 2 years of memories, where I'd thought we were building a future. When I glanced back through the closing door, I saw Kendrick standing alone in the kitchen, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw tears streaming down his face. But I couldn't go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The door clicked shut behind me and I walked down the hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Kendrick calling, probably trying to fix this with more words, more explanations. I silenced it without looking and kept walking. I drove aimlessly for a while, tears blurring the streetlights into starbursts of color. Eventually I found myself pulling up to Nina's apartment building. It was late, nearly midnight, but I had nowhere else to go. I couldn't face our apartment, couldn't sleep in the bed I'd shared with someone who apparently felt trapped by my love. I knocked on her door, half expecting her to be asleep, but she answered quickly, probably having heard the elevator. One look at my face and she didn't ask a single question. She just pulled me inside, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and guided me to her sofa. You don't have to talk about it if you're not ready, she said softly, disappearing into her kitchen. But I was ready. I needed to say it out loud, needed to make it real so I could start processing it. When she came back with 2 mugs of tea, I told her everything, the calendar, the confrontation, every painful word Kendrick had said about feeling suffocated by me. Nina listened without interrupting, her hand resting supportively on my shoulder. When I finally ran out of words, she simply said, "You can stay here as long as you need." That night, lying in her guest room, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Just a week ago, I'd thought Kendrick and I were solid. Now I didn't know if we'd survive this. More importantly, I didn't know if I wanted us to. My phone sat on the nightstand, buzzing periodically with messages I couldn't bring myself to read. Part of me wanted to block his number entirely, cut him off the way he'd cut me out of parts of his life. But another part, the part that still loved him desperately despite everything, couldn't quite let go yet. Tomorrow I'd figure out what came next. Tonight, I just needed to survive the pain of realizing that the person I loved most in the world had been slowly pulling away from me for months, and I'd been too blind to see it. 2 days passed in Nina's guest room, each one blending into the next in a haze of overthinking and unanswered questions. My phone filled up with messages from Kendrick, long paragraphs of apologies, explanations, desperate pleas for me to come home so we could talk properly. I read each one, but couldn't bring myself to respond. Every time I tried to type a reply, I'd remember the word suffocating and my fingers would freeze. Nina gave me space while somehow still making sure I ate and showered and remained functional. She'd leave for work in the mornings with a gentle squeeze to my shoulder, and return in the evenings with takeout and a willingness to listen if I wanted to talk. I was grateful beyond words for her presence, for this safe harbor while I tried to sort through the wreckage of my relationship. But the more I thought about it, the more confused I became. Was Kendrick right? Had I been suffocating him without realizing it? I replayed our relationship in my mind, examining my behavior with brutal honesty. The texts when he was late, were those concerned or controlling? Getting upset when plans changed, was that reasonable or rigid? Maybe I had been too demanding, too focused on having everything perfect and planned. Maybe my own insecurities had created exactly what I'd feared most, distance between us. On the 3rd day, I made a decision that might have been crazy but felt necessary. I pulled out my phone and texted Jeff, "Can we meet again? I need to understand something." His reply came faster than I'd expected. "Of course. Coffee? There's a quiet place on Maple Street if you want to talk." We met that afternoon at a small cafe tucked away from the main shopping district, the kind of place where you could have a private conversation without half the city overhearing. When I arrived, Jeff was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees in front of him. The awkwardness from our first encounter still hung between us, but I pushed through it. "I'm sorry if I was aggressive before," I started, sitting down across from him. "At the gym, I mean." He waved a hand dismissively. Don't apologize. If someone had been secretly meeting up with my partner, I'd have reacted the same way. Probably worse. I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, grateful for something to anchor me. Then I asked the question I'd been avoiding. The one I needed answered even though the truth would hurt. Do you have romantic feelings for him? Jeff's expression shifted, discomfort and honesty warring across his features. He took a breath, then met my eyes directly. Yes, I do, he admitted quietly. But I know he's in a relationship with you. I've never deliberately crossed that line. Caleb, I swear I haven't. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to continue. And him? Does Kendrick have feelings for you? Jeff turned his coffee cup in slow circles on the table, choosing his words carefully. He's confused. He loves you, that part is genuine. He talks about you all the time when we're together, but I think he's also scared. Scared of how intense the commitment has become. Scared that he's not measuring up to what you need. Not measuring up? He's incredible. The words burst out of me before I could stop them. That's exactly the problem, Jeff said gently. He doesn't feel incredible. He feels like he's constantly trying to reach some standard, constantly worried about disappointing you. When we hang out, there's no standard to meet. We just exist together. No expectations, no pressure to be anything other than what we are in that moment. I processed this slowly, painfully, feeling pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known existed start to click into place. Kendrick had been drowning under expectations I hadn't even realized I was placing on him. And instead of telling me, he'd found relief with someone else. What should I do? I asked. The question directed as much at myself as at Jeff. He looked at me with something like sympathy. That's your call to make. But here's what I've learned. Love isn't enough if you're not on the same page. If you both have different love languages, different needs from a relationship, then someone has to compromise. Or you both have to accept that maybe you're not right for each other. No matter how much you care. The words "let go" hung in the air between us, unspoken but understood. He mentioned you make him feel free. I said quietly, needing to understand. What does that mean? Jeff considered this. I think it means I don't need anything from him. I enjoy his company, but I'm not building a future with him, not depending on him for my happiness. There's no pressure, because there's no real stakes. It's easy, but easy isn't the same as meaningful. And with me, with you, it's real. It matters. It has weight. Jeff paused, then added that sometimes that weight feels like too much for him to carry. But that doesn't mean it's not valuable. It just means he needs to figure out if he's ready for it. I sat with that truth for a long moment, watching steam rise from my untouched coffee. Finally I stood. Thank you for being honest with me. I know you didn't have to do that. For what it's worth, Jeff said as I turned to leave. I think he wants to make it work with you. He's just scared of failing. I nodded and left the cafe, stepping out into the cool afternoon air. For the first time since finding that calendar entry, I could think clearly. I loved Kendrick. That hadn't changed. But love alone couldn't sustain a relationship where one person felt trapped and the other felt abandoned. We'd need more than love to fix this. We'd need honesty, vulnerability, compromise, and a willingness to really hear each other instead of just defending our own positions. The question was whether we were both capable of that level of work. Whether Kendrick was willing to be vulnerable about his fears instead of hiding behind Jeff. Whether I was willing to examine my own behavior and make changes, even if it scared me to loosen my grip on our carefully planned life. Walking back to my car, I pulled out my phone and looked at all those unread messages from Kendrick. Pages of desperate words trying to fix what had broken between us. Maybe it was time to stop running from this conversation. Maybe it was time to actually talk. Really talk about what we both needed and whether we could give it to each other. My finger hovered over his contact name. One call and we'd start down the path of either healing or ending this. Either way, we couldn't stay suspended in this limbo forever. I took a deep breath and made the call. Kendrick answered on the first ring, his voice rough like he hadn't slept. Caleb, we need to talk. Really talk, without the anger and accusations. My voice was steadier than I felt. Can you meet me? Yes. Anywhere. When? The desperate relief in his tone almost broke my resolve. Central Park. The bench where we had our first date. 6 o'clock. Neutral ground, I thought. A place filled with good memories to remind us what we were fighting for. I'll be there, he said immediately. Caleb, save it for when we're face to face. I interrupted gently. We have a lot to discuss. I arrived 15 minutes early, needing time to gather my thoughts before seeing him again. The park was beautiful in the evening light. Couples walking dogs, children playing on swings in the distance. Normal life continuing around me while mine felt suspended in uncertainty. Kendrick showed up exactly on time, looking like he'd been through hell. Dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it constantly, wrinkled clothes suggesting he'd slept in them. He sat down beside me, maintaining a careful distance. I'm sorry, he started immediately. For everything. For hiding Jeff from you. For making you feel like you weren't my priority. For all of it. I'm sorry too, I said, and watched surprise flash across his face. I've been thinking about what you said. About feeling suffocated. Maybe I have been too controlling without realizing it. Caleb, you're not— Let me finish, I said softly. I talked to Jeff again. He helped me understand some things about how you might be feeling. And I need you to know that I heard you. About needing space. About feeling pressure to be perfect. I don't want you to feel that way. Kendrick's hands twisted together in his lap. I talked to my therapist yesterday. Had an emergency session. She pointed out some things I've been avoiding. You're seeing a therapist? This was news to me. Started 2 months ago. Another thing I didn't tell you about. He looked ashamed. I thought I could handle the anxiety on my own, didn't want you to think I was falling apart. Pieces continued clicking into place. Anxiety about what? About us. About whether I'm good enough for you. About whether I can be the partner you deserve. The words spilled out faster now, like a dam breaking. You're so together, Caleb. You have your life planned out, you know what you want, you're confident and successful. And I'm just trying not to disappoint you every single day. Kendrick, you've never disappointed me. My voice cracked with emotion. But I was convinced I would. Eventually. So I kept Jeff separate because with him, there was no risk. If I screwed up, it didn't matter. Because we weren't building anything real. But with you every mistake feels catastrophic because I have so much to lose. I turned to face him fully. Did you develop feelings for him? He flinched at the direct question, but answered honestly. I don't know, maybe the beginning of something. But I stopped it before it went anywhere. Because you're who I want, Caleb. You're who I love. I just got scared of the weight of that love. Jeff told me he has feelings for you. I said quietly. I know. He admitted it to me last week. That's when I realized how badly I'd messed up, using him as an escape instead of dealing with my actual problems. Kendrick finally met my eyes. I told him we couldn't hang out anymore. Not like we had been. Is that what you want or what you think I want? He paused, considering. Both, maybe. I need to figure out my own stuff before I can be anyone's friend properly. And I need to prove to you that you're my priority. I took a deep breath, knowing we'd reached the crucial moments. Here's what I need, Kendrick. Complete transparency. No more secrets, even about the small stuff. If you're struggling, tell me. If you need space, ask for it directly instead of finding it elsewhere. Can you do that? Yes. Absolutely yes. And I need you to understand that I don't expect perfection. I expect honesty. I'd rather know you're struggling than have you pretend everything's fine while building a secret life I know nothing about. I understand. I really do. He shifted closer. What do you need from me to rebuild the trust? Time, I admitted. And consistency. Show me through your actions that I matter. That we matter. I can do that. What else? I need to work on myself too. On my insecurities that made me check up on you constantly. That made you feel monitored instead of loved. That's my part to own. Kendrick's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to lose you. These past few days have been torture. I don't want to lose you either. But we can't go back to how things were. That wasn't working for either of us. Clearly, so we go forward differently, he said, hope creeping into his voice. Build something better. If we're going to do this, we do it right. Maybe couples therapy? Someone who can help us communicate better? I'd like that. I want to do whatever it takes. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun set over the park, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was the same view we'd had on our first date, when everything felt new and uncomplicated. We couldn't get that simplicity back, but maybe we could build something stronger in its place. This won't be easy, I warned. Rebuilding trust takes time. There will be moments when I'm scared you're hiding things again, and you'll have to be patient with that. I know, and there will be moments when I feel overwhelmed, and I'll have to actually tell you instead of running away. We're really going to try this? I asked, needing to hear him say it. We're really going to try this, he confirmed, reaching for my hand. Not the old version, a new version, built on actual honesty instead of assumptions. I laced my fingers through his, feeling the familiar warmth of his touch. It wasn't a magic fix. We had months of hard work ahead of us. But for the first time since finding that calendar, I felt a small spark of hope. I love you, I said simply. I love you too, and I'm going to spend every day proving it. We stayed on that bench until the stars came out, talking about boundaries and needs and fears, making plans for therapy, for date nights, for the hard conversations we'd been avoiding. It wasn't romantic or dramatic. It was real, messy, uncomfortable work, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, that's all you need.